right, folks, now we take it to the other side of the counter. We've got the openers from Jack, so we want to dissect the games from a wagering perspective. Week 14 in the NFL, Brian Blessing and Bruce Marshall. We're both in Las Vegas. Bruce from the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet. Hello, Bruce. Another bizarre, eventful holiday weekend in the NFL.
It was a bizarre weekend, and it starts out kind of weird on Thursday. We get the word the Lions are all of a sudden they're going with the third-string quarterback who we last saw in preseason playing for the Browns, and then he darn near beats the Bears. And then Buffalo furthers Dallas's anguish, and the Saints sew up. They sewed up the NFC South earlier than the Dodgers sewed up the National League West, Brian. There are, before Thanksgiving's done, they're already home and hosed in the NFC South. And then it got kind of wacky again on Sunday. So just another weekend at the office in the
Well, let's move on to the Thursday night game, and we'll start with Dallas laying a field goal at Chicago. The total's 43. On Thanksgiving Day, Trubisky looked a little better. Bears get the win. But then Dallas gets absolutely smoked. I mean, they were dominated after going down the field on the opening drive. That was it. The crazy thing is, and we'll get to the Bills side of it in a moment, but everybody talks about what's wrong with Dallas. It's almost like, the Bills being good is an afterthought. But clearly you saw teams, I do think, back-to-back weeks with the Patriots and the Bills have a blueprint here. If you can take Cooper away and contain Elliott, and it's a big if, but if you can do that, these guys are just another team.
You're right. But here is my bone to pick for this. Thursday night, here we go, national TV. I think even Joe Buck and Troy Aikman might soon start objecting to Fox and these other networks, jamming Dallas down everyone's throats week after week.
It's sickening.
On these national telecasts. Now, Chicago hasn't deserved to be featured as much as it has been lately either. And the Bears have used a couple of close shaves versus the Matthew Staffordless Lions and a narrow win over the woeful Giants to climb back to 500. But, Dallas is lucky that a 6-6 record gets it first place in the NFC East here into December. And one note, Jason Garrett, who is under the microscope now, he's handled Jerry Jones's glare a bit better away from Arlington. The Cowboys have actually covered their last three on the road. So even after that unsightly loss to the Bills on Thanksgiving, I think Dak and Zeke still seem more likely to fire the winning scoring shots here than Mitch Trubisky. So the Gold Sheet, we picked Dallas here. We kind of held our breath, but, lesser of two evils maybe right now. 22-16 is our score. That also goes under, which has been pretty regular for Chicago, although the Thanksgiving game crept over. But that's the way we look at the game on Thursday, and can't wait for that one to get over with, actually.
All right, Baltimore's at Buffalo. Baltimore's laying 5.5. The total on the game is 43.5. Full disclosure, I'm a big backer of the Bills, but not to the point where you're going to burn money on them. And, when it's in doubt, there are a lot of ways to, either say pass or maybe play a total in the game. But I would ask this to you, Bruce. I can be wrong with the best of them, but I'm dead right about Thanksgiving Day. And it was an intangible that was in play. And I think there's another one here. And the point was, last year the Bills had the number 2 defense in the league. Trey White, Hyde, and Poyer, the safeties, in the number 2 defense in the league. All three of them were Pro Bowl players. All three of them were snubbed because the Bills never get any exposure. That was a day for them to, and now everybody says, the Bills introduced themselves. Well, that's exactly what we were saying before the game, that these guys would have an opportunity to make some noise. They did. There's another intangible in here. Baltimore, San Fran, great game. Is Baltimore the better team? Absolutely. But Baltimore plays a great game with San Francisco. The Bills get extra time to prepare. But here's the hidden little nugget in here, Bruce. Last year, they had the number 2 defense in the league. Baltimore beat them 47-3 in the opener when Nathan Peterman was the quarterback and given a short field, and the Bills got destroyed. And then they turned their defense around and went. Don't kid yourself, Bruce. That's over a year ago. Those players on Buffalo had circled this game. They were embarrassed by them, and they want revenge. Honestly, I'm telling you, I know it's an NFL team. They circled that game from over a year ago, and now all of a sudden, no one talks about this. If they win out, and it's a big if, but they actually control their own destiny to be the 1 seed, which is incredible.
They do, and I sure remember that opener last year, 47-3, and you remember it very well too. And it was Peterman, and things changed pretty quick after that for the Bills, and they got back on their feet. So yeah, that's an angle for sure. Forgive us at the Gold Sheet for not going loopy over the Ravens and Lamar Jackson in particular. But after all, it was only 3 years ago that Jackson was being hailed as the greatest force in college football history after a few big games at Louisville. Remember that, his Heisman year?
Right, but remember last year, he couldn't stretch the field. I mean, he would just run for his life. God, hey, hats off to this kid.
Yeah,
that he's been remarkable. Here, one other little one to throw at you. Don't forget, coming out of that quarterback class, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were kind of the afterthoughts. Everybody poked holes at the two of them. They're the two best.
Well, I've always been an Allen fan. To look good at Wyoming, running that offense is a real credit to him. But last week's final play escape versus the 49ers should remind everybody that Baltimore can indeed be challenged. And this is just the sort of assignment this undervalued Buffalo will embrace after they respond to the national stage in a big way on Thanksgiving at Dallas. The gnarly Buffalo defense and the likely Niagara chill can slow down Jackson, as did the Niners, I think.
Yeah.
So the robust Baltimore D, which is playing well, it's allowing only 10 points per game in the last 3, is playing good enough to maybe allow a narrow Ravens escape here. But 5.5 looks too many points. And originally there's a few 7s out there quickly bet down. I don't think it's going to move much off of this 5.5 all week. 20-19 Baltimore was our score forecast in the sheet, but that's a good vote for the Bills. I think they got a shot to win this game. And this is the week they could make up some ground. We'll get to that Patriots game in a minute.
Washington and Green Bay. I mentioned this to Jack. As if the Packers need help, right? They go to New York and they're playing on a snow field. Well, who's better served to do that? So they were like kids playing in the playground and got the W. Hey, listen, I don't know. You know what? I'm going to give Washington credit. Carolina, literally the air was out of the balloon after investing so much against the Saints. But down 14-0 in that game, Washington could have run for the bus. They're playing for the kid. So let's give them credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, give Bill Callahan credit, too, for keeping this thing together. And don't look now, but the hottest team in the NFC East at the moment might be the Redskins. They're surging like Alex Ovechkin and the Caps with back-to-back wins. They're the only team that's won a game in 3 weeks in that division. And there are some green shoots appearing on the Washington landscape now. You got a now healthy Darius Geis teaming with Adrian Peterson to form a nice ground and pound look. Backfield rolled for 248 rushing against Carolina. That's not too shabby. And that's made for a bit softer landing for Dwayne Haskins in his NFL quarterback debut. Now, the Packers took advantage of another rookie quarterback getting 3 picks against Daniel Jones last week, but they also took a while to put away the G-men. That was not easy. The score is very deceiving in that game, and they really haven't had a truly easy game since before Halloween. These big underdogs have been okay in the NFL this year, and it's hovering around 2 touchdowns. So even that's been bet down a little bit to 13.5 early in the week. That's too much, I think. Packers aren't all that great. 24-16 is our score forecast for Green Bay. So, yeah, we're taking Washington.
Denver's at Houston, Bruce. We're seeing 10s with the Texans favored. Totals 41.5. Denver gets kind of at the end, a miracle win. But they were right there. Tried to give it away. I mean, they basically had beaten the Chargers, lost it, and then or at least blew the lead. They get the win. Houston, Sunday Night Football, step on the Patriots' neck, and life is good. But they've got Tennessee coming up 2 of the final 3 weeks. This is one of those weird games where Houston better take care of business and not take these guys lightly.
Yeah. Now, the Denver quarterback carousel, it's landed upon Missouri rookie Drew Lock. He got an encouraging win in his first NFL start on Sunday, much like his predecessor Brandon Allen last month against the Browns. But keep in mind that Locke threw for all of 11 yards in the second half against the Chargers, and he needed that gift pass interference to set the winning field goal on the last play. Now, it's true, though. Uncle Vic is scheming the Broncos defense well enough to give Denver, which has covered 6 of its last 8, a look most Sundays. But Locke is still learning on the fly, and this week he'll have to deal with Romeo Crennel's well-disguised coverages that have unnerved rookie quarterbacks before. So Denver, I can't put the Denver on the board for too much, but Fangio's defense might be able to give Denver a look at this game. We'll see. One note here, this is the overriding angle here. The total side, even though Denver was over yesterday, it's still under 16-5 its last 21. The Texans are under 12-5 their last 17 at NRG. Should have been under again last night, but weren't. And that's, I think, the better angle in this game. Our score forecast was 24-13 Houston. Total's up there around 41.5 for Denver. That's a pretty high number, and I think this one goes under.
Ball game, Bruce. San Fran's at New Orleans. A lot at stake here. New Orleans laying 3, totals 45, probably stays there. Outside chance it gets to 3.5, but clearly the game of the week.
Yep. And as we noted at the outset there, the Saints have already sewn up the NFC South. So Sean Payton can use the next month to rid his team of some of their recent bad habits. That includes a slew of penalties, drop passes, and also an inability to properly cover onside kicks in preparation for the playoffs. So he's got some work to do. And now with possible home field NFC consequences on the line in this game, they'll need a cleaner performance to outscore the 49ers, who should have convinced any remaining doubters after their near miss at Red Hot Baltimore following that boat race of the Packers. Further evidence that San Francisco is for real. Impressive 5-1 straight up and against the spread on the road this year. And that's a real barometer of if a team's ready to take the next step. I think the Niners go in here and win this game. The Saints have not looked all that sharp to me the last few weeks. 27-20 San Francisco. That's actually a Gold Sheet key release on Sunday.
No, interesting game to say the very least. Then Cincy is at Cleveland. Cleveland laying 8.5, totals 42.5. Bengals said, look, we're not going down with a bagel on our resume. Go back to Dalton, who played pretty well against the Jets. And the Browns 1 week to the next. Bruce, you got any idea what's going on here?
Other than that, they're an immature mess. And no, although they have played a couple games at home okay lately. But talk about a real win-win for Cincinnati. I mean, the Bengals broke that Reds 0-for-11 slump last week against the Jets. Also, without losing ground to the Redskins or Dolphins in the race for the top pick in the draft, though the Giants are now suddenly looming menacingly on that horizon. But now that Andy Dalton, like you said, has taken back the wheel for the offense, we're less scared to back Cincy, whose revived defense played really well, 13 per game the last 3. Pressured Sam Darnold into oblivion on Sunday, 5 sacks, and that's bad news for the erratic Brownies if they can't protect Baker Mayfield better than last week when he was sacked 5 times against the Steelers. I think it was actually 4 sacks the Bengals had on Darnold, but several more pressures. Here's the note, though, Brian. In the department of surprising NFL trends, how about the Bengals' 8-1 spread mark their last 9 as a true visitor? Chew on that one for a minute. This team's been delivering big profits as a true visitor. I'm not counting that game in London as I was a neutral. So we're taking Cincy here plus, and they've also covered 5 straight games in Cleveland. Better teams maybe in the past, but I mean, series history has been all Cincy too. And 8 of the last 9 in this series. 20-17 Browns. I think they might escape, but I would love to see the Bengals beat them this week.
Sir, we move on. Carolina and Atlanta. And I talked to Jack about this in terms of what do you do? We were leery of Carolina investing so much and coming up just short against New Orleans, and then they blow a 14-0 lead over Carolina. Ron Rivera looks like a dead man walking on the sidelines. Atlanta's known their fate for a long time, Bruce. I don't. You know what? At this stage of the year, when teams are hopelessly out of it, if that lack of intensity shows up, I don't trust either team. But I don't see a lot of defense being played in this game. This is one of those where let's have some fun and pad some stats, I think.
Well, it could be. I mean, with the one possible savior, Cam Newton, to a season having gone bad, now iced on the injured reserve instead. Like you mentioned, Rivera GM Marty Herney and the rest of the Patriots brain trust, they're going to have to hold on like they're on one of those roller coasters at Carowinds there in Charlotte if they're to survive into 2020, because we know the owner, David Tepper, is very, very upset at this recent 4-game slump. And, he bought this team after those guys were hired too. So they better be careful. I'm not sure that Dan Quinn on the Atlanta side is on much firmer footing than Rivera, but I think he is. But I do know the Falcons have at least looked like they've wanted to play lately. They blasted Carolina 29-3 on November 17th, and they haven't committed a sin nearly as egregious as allowing the Redskins to rush for 248 as the Panthers did last week. So add it up. We're going to take Atlanta. Our score forecast is 24-17, but yeah, you might be right. It could end up being higher scoring, but I think Atlanta's the value side here. Kyle Allen also looks like he's kind of hit the wall. And the Panthers really are fading badly.
All right, Bruce, Detroit and Minnesota. We'll see what happens with the Vikings and Seahawks on Monday Night Football. But 14 points, totals 42.5. The questions, of course, around the Detroit quarterback.
Yeah, and the Vikings still going here in this game with Seattle as we speak tonight. So we'll see how they come out of that one. But you're right. I mean, the Lions are going through so many quarterbacks. That Milt Plum and Greg Landry might be on Matt Patricia's speed dial now after he went to that third stringer, like we mentioned at the outset, the Purdue rookie free agent David Blau, who piloted the offense on Thanksgiving and didn't look all that bad against the Bears. It's worth noting that Matthew Stafford's subs, Blau and Jeff Driscoll, is now on the IR, by the way, have at least given the Lions a chance in these recent games before the defense inevitably fails at key moments. That's been a recurring theme for the Lions for the last month and a half. Now, off of this game Monday at Seattle and having labored recently versus the likes of the Redskins and the Broncos at the U.S. Bank Stadium, I'm not sure we want to lay this heavy price of the Vikings, even though they've covered the last 4 in the series. They did beat these guys 42-30 in the first meeting, but that game was very back and forth until the last few minutes. And stretching beyond 2 touchdowns might be a bit of a chore. 27-17 was our score forecast here for Minnesota, but that would not get them over that 14-point hump.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. All right, Bruce, let's move on. Miami and the Jets. Jets laying 6. Total on the game is 44. The one thing I would say is give Miami credit. They show up every week. I mean, they're trying.
They are. And, looking at this one, the Post and those other Big Apple tabloids, they can revive their assault on the Jets this week after that stinker at Cincinnati, which reminded us that the J-men need at least another offseason of roster upgrades before they can threaten respectability. It is rare in any week that there might be a stronger case for Miami, but this might be one of those. The Dolphins have already beat New York once. That's also now 4 straight in this series. They have covered 6 of their last 8 after upsetting the Eagles. Now, maybe there's a 4-pick game lurking somewhere on the horizon for Ryan Fitzpatrick, but again, he was more than serviceable, 365-yard passing and 3 touchdowns versus the Eagles. And like you said, the Dolphins keep playing hard for Brian Flores. I don't see why they can't be worth a look, certainly at this price, worth some consideration here. We took them to win this thing outright, 24-22, Dolphins at MetLife on Sunday.
This next one's intriguing, where it's up to 3 now. Tampa Bay hosting Indy. The total on the game is 49. And to me, it's all about what is Indianapolis' mindset. Tampa Bay has been playing hard for Bruce Arians. Indy, the Vinatieri thing, it cost him a season. And honestly, it was more the missed kick in the first half, and then he had another one blocked. And then at the end, it was a travesty. But that last one was the game changer. They're going for the go-ahead field goal, block kick for a touchdown. That one was not Vinatieri's fault. I mean, the guy literally just came right through the line. But that's just devastating to Indy. Their season is likely toast now. How they react is the question here.
Yeah, and this is one of those we want to be careful. Are we really ready to jump on this emerging Tampa Bay bandwagon? And something is happening there. They have won 3 of 4. Bruce Arians has kept this thing together. Jameis Winston, more good games than bad games. So, I mean, he's at least got them thinking about keeping him on board beyond this year. We shall see. I could see Tampa Bay winning out here, Brian, and ending the year with the 6-game win streak. The schedule is not that challenging down the stretch here. I mean, not games that they couldn't win. So just keep an eye on them. The Indy, now it's lost 4 or 5. You mentioned the problems they've had all season long with Vinatieri, and it has been a problem for him. He's missed 8 field goals. He's had 6 extra points missed. He blocks, and the blocked field goal ended up turning the game around against Tennessee. But now Jacoby Brissett, who is missing some key cogs, T.Y. Hilton still hurting, Marlon Mack, top running back, Ebron, the tight end, they've all been hurting. Now he's got to face a Tampa Bay defense that's playing better, 11 sacks the last 2 games. This is one of these teams very quietly is putting some things together down the stretch, and though maybe this number is reacting a little bit too much, maybe not. I mean, the eye test says Tampa Bay, so why not 27-20? We're going to take the Bucs here to win. And thinking, actually, let's make that 30-23. The Bucs over trend still, it went under on Sunday, but still 10-3 to the over since late last year.
All right, Chargers laying 3 on the road at Jacksonville. 43 is the total. Chargers, again, devastating the way they lose. How many times in the last 10 years has Rivers had these kind of things happen to his football teams? How they react remains to be seen. But Jacksonville's given us every indication. They have run for the bus. Marone's a dead man walking. These players are undisciplined, a dysfunctional group. I couldn't bet Jacksonville with your money, but I don't trust the Chargers either.
Yeah, that's a dilemma here. But we do know the Jacksonville season has disappeared into the St. Johns River that runs right through downtown in Jacksonville there. And so, too, might Doug Marrone, who could soon follow the recent Sunshine State gridiron coaching casualties like Willie Taggart and Charlie Strong after the 4th straight lopsided Jags loss. The mustache man, owner Shad Khan, is reportedly not pleased. I would not be surprised to see the plug get pulled sometime this week.
Yeah, Bruce, even the people in Jacksonville want them to move to London.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure London doesn't want them now, though. So though they're also 4-8, the Chargers have at least been close in all of their losses, and this is a lesser of two evils argument. Suggests the Bolts, especially with Jacksonville likely back to Gardner Minshew at quarterback after the Nick Foles has not been able to summon his Philadelphia magic. 24-16 Chargers. We got a gulp to put that one out there, but again, you're going against Jacksonville, and there are a few worse things to do right now than go against the Jags.
Out of curiosity, Bruce, very quickly, is there a scenario in the last month here that Tyrod Taylor gets a look with the Chargers? I think Anthony Lynn knows what he is. He was part of the coaching staff in Buffalo, so he knows what he can do. I do think, he can move a football team. I think he has limitations, but what's the big picture deal for the Chargers with Rivers?
Well, to answer your first question, I think yes. We saw him warming up in Denver yesterday, and Rivers revived some in the second half. But I think the handwriting is on the wall there now for the Chargers. They have got to identify a successor at quarterback to Rivers sooner rather than later. Once they make this move away from him, that's it. And Rivers is expressed, doubt about playing in this new Rams stadium. I think he said he might want to play 1 year when they move. But he's at the end of the line, and they better identify a successor either in the draft or in free agency next year. And Taylor would be a short-term fix, but the answer to your question, yeah, I think they could. They almost did on Sunday.
All right. Big boy football, buddy. KC at New England. Patriots 3, total 48.5. Something's got to give. Chiefs offense against the Patriots defense, and question marks about Tom Brady and this offense.
Yeah, but, otherwise, it was also a pretty fun weekend. We got to watch Belichick and Nick Saban both off of losses after the game, and watching how uncomfortable they are I get a sort of a strange entertainment out of that, But anyway, the Belichick press conferences are extremely uncomfortable after he loses, as you know. So anyway, and New England losses are becoming less rare, as Tom Brady and this offense can't seem to shake out of their recent funk. In that game on Sunday night, at 28-22, very deceiving score. That was a 2 or 3 touchdown game there, and those were a couple of garbage scores late for the Patriots, although they actually had a chance to get that last onside kick. They weren't that close in the game. But this offense is struggling, and the knowledge now the trade deadline is passed in further search for help, and that Gronk isn't returning at least this year to help to add a badly needed red zone spark. We didn't see Mohamed Sanu and Dorsett help the passing game too much against Houston on Sunday night. So the Belichicks have now relinquished pole position in the AFC. Now, recent improvements on Kansas City's defense suggest the Chiefs have a chance to avenge a pair of those bitter losses to the Chiefs last year. And suddenly big games from Patrick Mahomes are not required every week. Still, we should note that these two have blasted well over in all 3 of their meetings since 2017, well over. Mm-hmm. So this 49 series history says they can probably, they should get there, although recent performances suggest maybe not. But we're going to go with series history here and actually take Kansas City to win one here. I think the Patriots are in trouble, Brian. 28-26, I know we've thrown dirt on them before, but something looks different here because I don't see the answers offensively on the roster right now, and they can't. There's nobody else out there they get.
Yeah, they can't. I mean, the defense has to, create turnovers here. In the big picture, Bruce, and maybe the ship has sailed to the point. If New England's at home in the playoffs, okay. I mean, they can go again. Bottom line is, I don't see this team going on the road and doing it in the playoffs.
Yeah, one note here. We're into December now, and they've got 3 of their last 4 at home, and I think the only road trip is Cincy. And we know the Bills come in here later, but you got Bills, Kansas City. You got 2 very tough teams coming in. They are 36-4.
Yep.
At home since 2001.
They're a different animal at home.
Yeah, in December they've been really good, so just keep that in mind too.
Yeah. Pittsburgh, Arizona. Pittsburgh's 1.5, totals 43.5. Steelers back from the grave. You need a roster to know who the quarterback is. Bottom line is, Bruce, they're in the playoffs and highly motivated. Arizona was embarrassed, so you think maybe a bounce back effort. If you wanted it an intangible, this is going to be a home game for Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, they'll show up down there, and I know some people from up here that are going down to Phoenix to watch the game, so they will have more fans there. The Steelers, I think Mike Tomlin should be in the Coach of the Year conversation, keeping this thing together. Like you said, at this moment, they would be the 6th seed in the AFC. Quite something considering they're on their 3rd quarterback. They do have the following week, they've got Buffalo and Baltimore still upcoming too, so it ain't going to be easy. But
Which got flexed to the Sunday night game, by the way.
Yeah, and that's good, and it should, because they're worth watching here. Now, even with, I think actually, Devlin Hodges, the rookie from Sanford, I think they're better off with him than Mason Rudolph right now. I mean, this kid really plays within himself, and he does exactly. They're not asking him to do that much, but he is executing everything that Tomlin and Randy Fichtner want him to, and he's been very good. We know this defense is solid. He's got a pretty good rapport with James Washington, the wide receiver from Oak State. It'd be nice to get Schuster back, but I think they might be able to beat the Cardinals anyway, because we saw what a really elite, a good defense could do to the Cardinals on Sunday, and they're not there yet. And the Rams really went in there and took them apart. It was a mad Rams team for sure. But listen, the Pittsburgh sacked Baker Mayfield, Cleveland 5 times on Sunday. They held Nick Chubb to well under 4 yards per carry, and we know this defense can do it. The Big Reds wins thus far in 2019 have come versus the Bengals, Giants, and Falcons, a combined 6-30 straight up. So their 3 wins aren't all that impressive. 29-16 Pittsburgh, Gold Sheet key release Sunday.
Tennessee is a 2.5 or 3-point favorite at Oakland, 46.5. Raiders embarrassed by the Chiefs 2 weeks ago. We said it 2 weeks ago. Hey, it looks great now, but that Jets game was a trapdoor for them, and they responded horribly to it. So they're toast. Tennessee's on a dead run. They're a different football team with Tannehill in there. I will say this, though, Bruce. Watching the Indianapolis game, Derrick Henry, because of Tannehill, Henry's a monster. But the play calling at Tennessee was actually unbelievably weird. Tannehill's sacked 7 times in that game, and Henry's getting 7 yards a carry, and they're throwing it all over the place, and Tannehill's running for their life. Ride Derrick Henry. and be done with it and count on your defense. So as good as it is for Tennessee, and they're going in the right direction, that was really disconcerting to me, watching how Tennessee cannot pass block. And believe me, that stuff shows up on tape. And they got the 2 games with Houston coming up. They better be careful here.
Yeah, and but they are kind of riding Derrick Henry here. He had another big game on Sunday. He's gained 496 the past 3 games. They were using him as a decoy for some unknown reason for a while there, but Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, decided to let the big ex-Bama bruiser run it, and that has certainly been part of this resurgence. Now Oakland, they have had worse back-to-back road games in their history. Try 1961, Brian, when the Raiders lost 55-0 at Houston and 44-0 at San Diego to open the season. How about that? But in recent memory, it's hard to recall 2 worse, more feeble consecutive efforts on the road than these last 2 at the Jets and the Chiefs. The Silver and Black was outscored a combined 74-12. And like you said, they were unmasked as a pretender instead of a contender. Now, that contender label does fit the Titans now. I think they have won 5 of 6 since Tannehill went in there, although you do voice some legitimate concerns about some of the specifics. But Tannehill is a decent game manager, and it's proven a godsend for this one struggling offense. We'd also note the over trend here since Tannehill is also 6 and over to the over in all games Tannehill has started. But I don't think the slumping Derek Carr, who's only got 2 last 3 games space, 33-21 Titans.
You just, again, led me into what I was going to ask you. If they were putting lipstick on a pig or whatever, and I think the jury was out with Gruden and the Carr thing, would that work? Big picture, the move to Las Vegas next year, how this last month goes here. Does Gruden do it? Maybe the same question we had with the Chargers. I don't know that he gives Peterman a look, or I don't know. But is this the end of the road for Carr with Oakland? And are they plotting a course for a new quarterback down the road here? Do you believe, based on what happens in this last month?
It's a good question, Brian. But in this case, I think they're going to try to let Carr play out of it because they've still got a look at the playoffs. Peterman would be an abject surrender if they put him in. At least the Chargers would have a chance to win with Taylor in there. But I think they're going to let Carr play out and see if he can shake it in the last month. But you bring up a good point, because I think if he doesn't look better in these last 4 weeks, that's a decision they're going to have to make in the offseason before they move here to Vegas.
Seattle and the Rams, we'll see what happens with the Seahawks and the Vikes on Monday Night Football. Number as of this taping, 2.5. Seattle favored on the road against the Rams. The total's 46.5. That's pretty telling, isn't it? I mean, the Rams, murdered Arizona. Bruce, they murdered them. And if you watch that game, you're like, what are they doing? I mean, some of the stuff Goff does, it was just ridiculous. Arizona was a complete no-show. The Rams' play calling is an atrocity.
It is, and it'll cost them, I think, and it has cost them against the better teams this year. And to be accurate here or objective here with the Arizona, not to get too carried away, they have destroyed Arizona the last couple of years, so that matchup just hasn't worked. And they were coming off that humiliation against Baltimore too, so it all lined up. The stars were aligned for once for the Rams. But you're right, the play calling has been spotty at best. Many games this year, and let's remember Seattle. Now again, we're talking before this Monday night game against the Vikings. They win this game on Monday, they are in a dead flat-footed tie with San Francisco in the NFC West. And oh, by the way, they would also have the tiebreaker on the 49ers too temporarily. They got to play them again one more time, but they did beat them once. So it's all there for the Seahawks, and the top seed in the NFC could be possible too. So, I mean, everything is in front of them. Best yet for Seattle. They're 6-0 away from home this season, so they shouldn't mind this trip down to the Coliseum. Now, the first meeting, kind of wild. Seahawks won that by 1 on a Thursday night, early October, when Zerline missed that 44-yarder in the last few seconds. That seemed to kind of flip the switch on both of these teams, or flip the plot both ways this year. The Rams have kind of slid since then, and Seattle has really surged. Russell Wilson's having a big year, and I think he's going to be able to get the Seahawks a win. 31-23, our score forecast here. We went a little higher on this score because the last 4 in this series have gone over. and we know Seattle can do some things offensively. Although the Seahawks defense has been playing better lately, but we're going to side with the series trends, at least on the total here.
And then we wrap it up Monday night, Bruce. Giants and Eagles. Number would have been 10 or higher had the Eagles gone to Miami and taken care of business. Their eggs are still all in the having to beat the Cowboys basket, but they made themselves a pickle that maybe even winning that game may not be enough.
Well, I'll tell you, all of my friends and relatives back in Philadelphia, when I listen to them, and I do a show with actually my godson tonight. I'm doing a show with him in Philadelphia. It's almost like, Orson Welles and War of the Worlds. If you tune into WIP or one of the sports talk stations online, and the Delaware Valley is fearing the demise of mankind after the Birds blew a chance to catch Dallas in the NFC East with that Miami loss. They're so overboard with this. You can believe it. You've seen it. But whatever they're saying to Angelo Cataldi and Al Morganti and the others in Philadelphia on the radio, the Birds are awfully lucky to live in the NFC East.
That's it.
Their 5-7 mark is still just a length behind the Cowboys. And if they win out, they're in. They would win it. They would win the tiebreaker if they win out. And moreover, the faltering Giants look even less menacing than the Dolphins and provide 2 chances for Philly to get well in December here. But before you lay points with the Birds here, just note, road dog roll has been the one decent one lately for the Giants. They have covered 9 of their last 12 in that roll, and they just got one the other week, a W against the Bears. But the big question is, what on earth are the Giants doing on Monday Night Football for the second time in the past month? Boy, somebody has really messed up with that schedule this year. 27-22 Eagles. I think they win, but I'm going to stick with that Giants road dog trend. They might stick within the number this week.
Well, and the bottom line is, it is what it is. I mean, it's not like we're going to, change the rules, but it is kind of patently unfair that even if the Eagles win out, all right, they're a 9-win team. So what's going to end up happening here is that probably a 12-win team is going to have to go on the road to play the Cowboys or the Eagles. That's basically what's going to happen. And it could be a 12-win team going on the road to play a 500 team in a playoff game. That seems patently unfair to me.
Yeah, right now, I mean, Dallas or Philadelphia would host the Niners or Seattle in the first round in the wild card round. If that doesn't seem, this is the only division where the Eagles would still have a look, but it is what it is.
Insane. All right, we're 14 weeks into it, and we're turning for home. He's Bruce Marshall from the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet. I'm Brian Blessing. We're hanging with you in Las Vegas. Looking forward to another great weekend of NFL football. As always, Bruce, thanks for the great information.
My pleasure.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.